Are you sounding impolite in English? Hey guys, it's Anna. Welcome back. I really appreciate you being here. And here is the go-to place for those who want to become an effective communicator as a non-native English speaker. Here is also the place you learn how to employ cultural, emotional, and social competences to your already great English language skills. In today's video, we are going to talk about cultural differences speaking in English and politeness. More specifically, politeness when confirming information. By the end of this video, you will understand how politeness is a cultural construction and why you might be sounding impolite to English speakers even when you're not. So if you want to learn how to leverage cultural differences when confirming information in English, keep watching. I remember a time when I was a student working for a newspaper at college. This was back in 2018, and one day we decided to go for drinks after work. So after a few drinks, one of the journalists turned to me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Okay, sure, go ahead." And then he went, "Why are Brazilian people so impolite?" I was like, "Excuse me?" And I asked, "What do you mean?" And then he said, "Well, before you, we had another Brazilian student, and I remember that one day I was helping her with one of her articles, and I was explaining something to her, and she didn't understand. And so she went, 'Why?' And then I was like, 'Yes, and?' Because, honestly, I was still waiting for the impolite part of the conversation to come up. And then he was, 'Yeah, she just asked why,' just like that. And so I answered, 'Well, she was just checking to see if she had understood what you said. This is how we check information back there.' And he was, 'Oh.' And then I was, 'Oh.' And then we were just like looking at each other like, that's so confusing. Anyway, and then I went home thinking and trying to understand why confirming information the way the Brazilian girl did was impolite in his eyes. Here's the thing though, I didn't notice when my own way of confirming information in English changed or how it changed. But after this, I became more aware of how people were asking for clarification, and I started to observe the interaction across cultures. Toronto is such a multicultural city that I had a lot to look at, and after a while I observed this pattern. Whenever non-native English speakers would go speaking in a too objective or straightforward way, using only the words that would be enough to answer or to ask questions, that would be perceived as impolite by someone whose cultural quotient is not well developed. So if we look back to the story of the journalist and the Brazilian girl, we get to see that she used the words, but she was unaware of cultural influences on the process of speaking a foreign language, as we all were at some point in our journey to work cross-culturally. And the journalist, he had someone meeting him halfway because the girl was speaking the language, but he was unable to consider cultural background influences in the way that she was speaking, and so he judged her as impolite. So at this point is where we get to see that politeness is a cultural construction, which for one group, asking directly might be objectiveness. For another group, asking directly might be considered impolite. Let me expand this with examples. A group of countries such as Colombia, Chile, and Brazil, which is the Latin America cultural background, or countries like Russia, Poland, and Greece, Eastern European and Central Asia cultural background have a straightforward way of confirming information comparing to the more lengthened way of the Anglo-Saxon cultural background, which are countries like Ireland, USA, and Canada. And this straightforwardness might be understood as impoliteness. Two different perspectives, both given by different cultural backgrounds, plus low cultural quotient from both parts, can result in conflicts and misunderstandings in our communicative interactions, working, studying, interacting cross-culturally, or speaking a foreign language. And usually we do have low CQ, cultural quotient, simply because we were not taught to observe cultural differences within our relationships, let alone speaking English as a foreign language. What we do is to speak the English language as if you were still speaking and interacting in our first language's cultural background. That's why we cannot separate language from cultural backgrounds, because it will affect the quality of our messages. Now that you understand politeness as a cultural product and why you might be sounding impolite when speaking in English, let's dive into two ways in which you can leverage cultural differences when confirming information. For that, we use bridges. This is not an official name or term. I like to call them like this because for me, a non-native English speaker living abroad and working abroad, they connect my message to somebody when we communicate in English. At the same time, we are also considering the language's background. Here I need to open a parenthesis. So in English books or YouTube channels, you might find this under how to ask information politely in English. And I understand why it's said like that, because this is what is going to be taught. You're gonna learn how to say something politely in English. However, for me and for what I believe is necessary to become an effective communicator as a non-native English speaker, it's absolutely important that you know that politeness is a concept generated within cultures, and if we don't acknowledge this, we might be at risk of making assumptions about different cultural backgrounds and not developing our own cultural quotient at all. And we don't want that. We want to become cultural, emotional, social aware, effective communicators, right? So, parentheses done. Let's go to the bridges. So the bridges are just a way of connecting what is this that you want to ask to the way in which this cultural background and this language cultural background understand as politeness. So it's basically an expression that you use before you ask for the information you want or for clarification. So the first one, it would be, let me see if I understood it right. And then you add the information you didn't understand. So then you can confirm it. For example, if someone went through the steps of an activity and you want to confirm if you understood the steps right, you go, okay, so let me see if I understood it right. First, we have to read the statements, then we have to complete them, and then we have to discuss those statements with our partners. Is that right? And then the person would say, yes, that is right. You see? So then you use the expression, you add the information, and then you just used a bridge. The second way you could also be using a bridge to confirm information in English would be, I'm sorry, you lost me on XYZ. Would you mind going over XYZ points again? For this one, you can think of a meeting, and let's say that at some point you got lost. And so you could ask for clarification like this. So that let's imagine a situation like there is someone talking about sales report, and you missed points A, B, and D, and then so you ask someone, I'm sorry, you lost me on points A, B, and D of the sales report. Would you mind going over those points again? And then the person is going to say, oh, unfortunately, that's not possible because I have to move on with the agenda, but we can talk later. Or they're going to go over and they're going to repeat the points one more time for you. It's important to see that learning how to navigate the English language cultural background will help you not only to get your message across, but also it will save you from any backlash from people whose cultural quotient is incredibly low, and you have to communicate in English with them on a regular basis. Now at this point, you've learned how cultures can interfere in our ideas of politeness and what you can do to save yourself from any unnecessary conflicts that might arise from misunderstandings. While you wait for next week's video, I post other videos on how to employ cultural, emotional, and social competences when communicating English as a foreign language. So feel free to check those videos over here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.